A woman and her wife were building their life together.
They got married on the beach. They would laugh together. They were getting along good. Outside looking in, it seemed normal.
Until it ended with a bloody assault in a Georgia hotel room.
Not only was there a pool of blood, there is blood smeared up the door. The victim's halfway in and halfway out of her door. She is bleeding profusely.
She had been stabbed 34 times total.
The investigation reveals one of them has a history of violence.
Like any other couple, we argued.
Shondell stated that she was verbally abusive, emotionally abusive, physically abusive.
She finally broke free, but her ex-girlfriend was still stalking her.
But was the stabbing a repeated pattern or an attempt to silence a co-conspirator?
I asked her what was wrong, and she said, I killed my ex-girlfriend.
She was completely paranoid and scared that the ball was going to drop any day.
She threatened to kill her over the situation, in a sense of, if I can't have you, nobody can have you.
On the morning of December 10th, 2018, police in Conyers, Georgia are called to the scene of a bloody crime.
Conyers 911, where's your emergency?
Yes, ma'am. I'm calling from Motel 6 Conyers. Somebody's screaming and hollering.
He stated that he had guests telling him that there was a lady screaming for help, saying that she's trying to kill me inside of the hotel room. The maintenance worker was unable to make contact by knocking on the door, so the hotel manager called 911, and as he's talking to us on the phone, the door opens, and the victim falls outside the door, and he sees all the blood. When I arrived, I could see that the victim had shallow breathing. She appeared to be in a state of consciousness. You could tell that she was very weak and was losing a tremendous amount of blood. EMS began to arrive shortly after.
She's bleeding profusely from the abdomen. I see the knife.
The knife on the floor.
I see it. Hey, honey, what's your name?
The hotel room itself also bears the signs of a brutal attack.
Not only was there a pool of blood there is blood smeared up the door, as if I would surmise that she probably slid on her back. There are also bloody handprints all over the curtains. You would surmise she's trying to get curtains open because she's hollering for help.
Who did this? Do you know Joyce's last name? Okay. Who is she to you?
Rosalind Lewis was born in New Orleans, Louisiana on August 31st, 1971.
It's my two older brothers, and then it was Rosalind and myself. We had loving parents, my mom, my dad. We was brought up just to love and to nurture and to care and to have laughter and just be good people. Rosalind was a bundle of joy. She literally met no stranger. Coming from New Orleans, our culture, everyone is baby or sweetheart. She talked to everybody. She made you laugh. She had this huge smile, beautiful white teeth that just lit up the room. She went to college in New Orleans, Louisiana for a period of time. And then she started working in healthcare, medical billing and things like that. She liked the seniors. She liked the elderly people. She was able to give them some kind of joy.
Rosalind's open acceptance of people also extended to her love life.
Rosalind was around the age of when she first started dating same-sex, mid-20s, I want to say, with Rosalind coming out as being a lesbian. It was mixed feelings within the family. Some of the family understood, some of the family was taken back, shocked. We grew up very Christian family, very religious family, so that was maybe taboo, to say the least. It never wavered our love for her. I just wanted her to be genuinely happy at the end of the day.
In the early 1990s, Rosalind decided it was time to make a change and moved east to Atlanta, Georgia.
She wanted to go to better herself, to get a different environment, a different take on the world. And my dad would call 1,000 times a day because that was his first daughter, his baby girl.
Rosalind found a new job in a medical call center. She also found the love of her life, Joyce Pelzer.
I want to say they just met out somewhere through a mutual friend. One of the things that she liked about Joyce, that she was spontaneous, that she was adventurous. Adventure was one of Rosalind's key things, that she just would get up on a whim and go. First meeting Joyce, she looked like she had a good head on her shoulders. She seemed to be educated, kind, nice. She just was a well put together person. She just was a normal person.
After dating for several years, the two women got married in 2016.
They got married on the beach. My mom and my dad didn't attend the wedding. They loved Rosalind with everything in their hearts. But that was just something that they wasn't willing to participate in. Some of my cousins went and witnessed, but we didn't go. Seeing Rosalind and Joyce interact as a couple, outside looking in, it seemed normal. They would laugh together. They were getting along good. This is what she wanted.
Now, 2 years later, Rosalind is barely clinging to life outside a hotel room in Conyers. And she says her wife, Joyce, was the one who attacked her.
Of course, there were life-saving measures trying to happen in order to keep her alive.
It was an overabundant amount of stabs, a tremendous amount of blood loss. Once they approached the ambulance, Rosalind went into cardiac arrest, so they had to begin CPR. She was taken by ambulance to the hospital.
The information that she told us that her wife, Joyce, had stabbed her. We're knocking on doors, interviewing witnesses, collecting video. We had to apprehend her and keep her from hurting someone else.
I go to the front desk and I meet with the manager of the hotel. He provided me with the registration for the room that had been occupied for about 3 days by Joyce Pelzer. I had him pull the video up for me to watch at the hotel, and you can observe during the altercation the curtains moving back and forth.
From watching the video, you know there's a severe fight going on behind the curtains.
A short while later, you see a maintenance worker knock on the door of the hotel room and then walk away. And then the door opens. You see the arm of the victim fall outside the door as the suspect begins walking toward the rear parking lot.
Next, officers speak to the maintenance worker that saw Joyce flee the motel.
What all do you know about what happened?
I'm hearing somebody scream, so I knocked on the door. She coming up. She went straight down. So I took off. Ran behind the girl and stabbed her. And when she saw me following her, she tried to run.
Where did she run to?
To her car.
He gave a description of Joyce leaving the hotel room. She was not wearing shoes, she was only wearing socks. We did find bloody footwear impressions on the sidewalk, and the pattern was consistent with wearing just socks.
Witnesses did describe that she appeared very calm, but that she was bloody. Her hands were bloody, her clothing was bloody on the front. The innkeeper told us that the car that left was a dark car that was an out-of-state plate that had the numbers 307 on it.
As the manhunt swings into high gear, police are left wondering what could have caused such a vicious attack.
We had a lot of law enforcement south on I-75 that was looking for Joyce Pelzer and the black Nissan that she was operating.
They need to use caution because she was somebody that we felt was a danger.
Coming up, a previous missing persons investigation suggests a pattern of behavior.
She was in a violent relationship with her ex-girlfriend, Joyce Pelzer.
And police begin to suspect the two cases are connected.
She has a pattern of not allowing people to leave her.
Conyers police are tracking down Joyce Pelzer after paramedics have transported her wife, Rosalind Lewis, to the hospital in critical condition. Emergency room doctors are fighting to save her life.
Rosa had been stabbed 34 times total. There was one penetrating wound from the back that caused her lung to collapse at that point. Another significant stab wound was in the neck.
Unfortunately, she did pass. She was not able to make it. Now this has gone from attempted murder to an actual murder investigation.
We contacted Georgia State Patrol and the Marshal Service. At the same time, we have crime analysts back at headquarters. We have been feeding information as quickly as we could get it to them.
Analysts conduct a background search on Joyce, looking for any possible motive for the murder. What they find is surprising.
Our analysts had found out that Joyce was the person of interest in a missing person case in DeKalb County, so we felt like she was dangerous.
The missing persons case was filed 7 years ago, and the woman in question was Joyce's ex-girlfriend, 35-year-old Shondell McLeod.
Her mother called the police after she didn't show up for dinner on a Sunday night on September the 25th of 2011. Shondell also hadn't gone to work that morning. That was very unlike Shondell.
Shondell was hired on at Nurse Care Buckhead as a cook, and that's how I met her. That Sunday morning, another young lady called me and told me that Shondell wasn't at work. And that was kind of unusual for Shondell because she always called me if she couldn't make it that day, but so I can step in.
Unfortunately, you have to wait 24 hours before you can upgrade this case to a missing persons case because she is an adult.
After 2 days passed with no sign of Shondell, the case was assigned to Detective Henry Guest.
He gave me the report. I called Miss McLeod. I said, hey, I see you made a police report about your daughter being missing. This lady was hysterical. And then she explained her relationship to me of her and her daughter, how close they were as a family, and that she would never just walk away from the family. Miss McLeod had told me Shondell was in a violent relationship with her ex-girlfriend, Joyce Pelzer. From there, I just started reaching out to track down Joyce.
Detective Guest begins by digging deeper into Shondell's background.
Shondell has 6 brothers and 1 sister.
The family was originally from Guyana, and her mother moved with her children when Shondell was fairly young to New York originally. They then moved to Atlanta.
She was very close to her family, you know. They depended on her, especially her mother. Shondell took her to the grocery store, just whatever her mother needed. Just a loving family, you know, from day one since I met them.
They were always bonding, and they eventually started cooking together. And it actually eventually led to her getting a job in Gwinnett at the Life Care Center.
Cooking was her passion. She took pride in whatever she do. Everybody was, ready to eat whatever she cooked.
Detective Guest learns the job provided Shondell with more than just a source of income.
While Shondell was working at the Life Care Center of Gwinnett, that's where she met Joyce Pelzer. They developed a friendship, but that friendship turned into something a little bit more.
And eventually, her mother found out she was dating a woman, and her mother was very upset. It was brand new to her. She accepted it, but she didn't like it. I think her family was most supportive, because they wanted to see Shondell happy.
Shondell's mother tells investigators she thought the relationship was going well. So she was shocked to learn the truth was quite different.
Shondell was telling her mom everything that was going on. Shondell stated that Joyce was verbally abusive, emotionally abusive, physically abusive, how she was controlling. She didn't like when certain people would really be around. She would want Shondell to really end certain relationships that she did not like. Mind you, Shondell is also stating that Joyce was having her own relationships on the side.
She had been a mother that she felt Joyce was out there being unfaithful.
The woman Shondell suspected Joyce was cheating with was Rosalind Lewis. Shondell's mother tells Detective Guest that led to a breakup in 2011.
She finally broke free of her. She finally got her out of the house, but the lady was still stalking her.
She would call Shondell's friends and ask them about her, plead with them to convince Shondell to come back, to give her another chance. She would follow Shondell around.
Over the following months, Joyce's harassment only continued to escalate.
One day, Joyce came and pretty much took everything out of their house, even the toilet seats off the toilet. Took all the furniture, all the fixtures, everything. Shondell was pretty much sleeping on an air mattress.
Shondell she was distraught. She was crying. She was very upset. You come home she don't took pictures up, throw them in the yard, taking everything that she ever worked hard for.
Shondell spent the next month trying to put the incident behind her and rebuild her life.
At this point, they've broken up. Joyce is out of the house. She thinks she's at peace. Just to wake up in the middle of the night of Joyce standing over her with a knife. Joyce threatened to kill her over the situation, in a sense of, if I can't have you, nobody can have you.
In July, Shondell went to the court and asked for a protective order. Shondell told her mother that she was scared she was going to die that night.
Investigators are searching for Joyce Pelzer after her wife, Rosalind Lewis, named her responsible for the stabbing before ultimately succumbing to her injuries. In a shocking revelation, investigators learn Joyce was considered a primary person of interest in ex-girlfriend Shondell McLeod's disappearance 7 years earlier in September of 2011.
At the time, my biggest thing was to talk to Joyce. We have our suspicion, but there's always two sides to the story.
Joyce eventually comes into the police station, and she also brings Rosalind Lewis, her current girlfriend, and Joyce sits down for questioning.
This is going to be in reference to a missing person, Miss McLeod. How do you know Miss McLeod?
We used to date for a couple of years, and we also lived together.
Were you ever served with a TPO order to stop no contact with her?
Yeah, but she called me still.
She just sat there and looked at me. It was like, if you've been in a relationship for 5 or 6 years, I believe you would have some kind of expression. She had no expression. I asked her about that. She said, well, Shonda had hurt her, and she said she wanted to go back to her family. She don't believe she's missing. She believes she's in Guyana.
How was the relationship between you two?
It was good. Like any other couple, we argued.
Never got violent?
No.
Police was never called?
Never.
She made it seem like all of these details that were coming out from family and friends were completely untrue.
Joyce also claimed to have an airtight alibi the night Shondell disappeared.
She indicated that she had been home with Rosalind all weekend, the weekend that Shondell's believed to have gone missing.
How about on the 26th?
Went to work.
Because Rosalind was part of Joyce's alibi, police went on to question Rosalind about what took place.
I'm just going to take a statement from you. What I'm investigating is a missing person.
Who's missing?
Who's missing?
Yes.
Joyce's ex-girlfriend. You know her name?
Yeah, Shondell.
She indicated, like Joyce did, that they had been home all that weekend, that they really hadn't left the house. But unlike Joyce, on the Monday, she indicated that she went to work. Rosalind said that on Monday, they had stayed home as well.
Yeah, both stayed home.
Yeah. We chilled out. It was one of those days you just want to just chill out. Because we didn't really do a whole lot. I was like, okay, let's just stay home today.
Crazy kids.
Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do.
Joyce lied to police. Police still have a lot of lingering questions. After investigating and interviewing Joyce and Rosalind, certainly had them as people of interest.
Detectives don't have enough to charge Joyce, so they follow up on her other alibi.
I checked records. Her supervisor pulled the records. She said she did not show up that day. So, that's a falsified statement.
The detectives get a search warrant for Joyce Pelzer's phone records as well. And what they're able to determine is that not only did she lie about going into work on Monday, but she wasn't at home on Sunday or Saturday. She wasn't with Rosalind, as she said. In fact, there were multiple phone calls and text messages between Joyce and Rosalind showing that they weren't together.
Basically, her whole alibi gets blown up. So if you're lying about that, what else are you lying about?
The phone calls and false statements suggested to police that Rosalind was covering something up for Joyce. So investigators searched Shondell's home, looking for signs of a struggle.
Shondell lives in the up-and-coming part of DeKalb County. We was thinking maybe she got abducted from in front of the house.
While there's no evidence of a struggle or anything like that, they do find a man's watch on the floor in her bedroom, as well as some shot glasses in the sink. It looks like someone may have come over, she may have had company, and they had a drink together. And there was also an ashtray with some cigarettes.
Miss McLeod had told us, Shondell didn't really drink, she didn't smoke. We found cigarette butts, we found a man's watch there, and I believe we found liquor.
Joyce is a person of interest that keeps coming up, but now they're trying to figure out who this person was, who was in the house with Shondell, because the evidence is right there saying that there's another person involved.
Coming up, investigators zero in on the truth.
Joyce and Rosalind, their relationship is troubled just like Shondell and Joyce's relationship was troubled.
And they learn of Joyce's plan to silence her own wife.
She said, I am not a good person. She said, I knocked off my ex-girlfriend.
Investigators believe the murder of Rosalind Lewis may be connected to the disappearance of Shondell McLeod 7 years earlier through their shared ex, Joyce Pelzer, who is currently on the run. When evidence of a third party was found at Shondell's home, detectives wondered if they had a new person of interest or a possible witness.
So now investigators are trying to really figure out the pieces of who this person was.
So in talking to Shondell's co-workers, they learned that she struck up this flirtation and romance with the food delivery driver, Rico.
He was very nice, so friendly. That's the person who she would ha-ha, giggle with every morning.
Shondell wanted to have kids. She wanted to start back dating men.
The issue, though, is that Rico was actually married. That certainly created an inference of motive that he might have had something to do with Shondell's disappearance.
To find out the details of the potential affair, investigators brought Rico in for questioning.
When he comes in, he's a little nervous because police are telling him that Shondell is missing.
Unlike Joyce, he appears very concerned, very upset, and emotional.
He said he had been seeing her for quite a while now, but he didn't plan on leaving his wife or his children anytime soon.
He knew all about Joyce. He said Shondell was so afraid of her that he used to leave a pair of his work boots over at her house to sit him outside, because Joyce would drive by the house.
Rico confirms he was with Shondell on September 24th, the night before she disappeared.
He said it was him that was smoking, that was his watch.
He explains he went over to Shondell's house, he had a few drinks, and because he was drinking, he wanted to kind of sleep it off for a second. A little after midnight, he's rushing to try and get back to his house. And that's why the watch was still at the house. But he does go back home to his wife. He sleeps with her the rest of the night.
He was very cooperative, but based on our records, he was the last one that saw her.
Although Rico seemed genuine, detectives needed to verify his story, which involved an uncomfortable conversation.
They call the wife. She's obviously distraught because she just found out her husband has been cheating on her.
She verified all of his information of what he told us.
She had every opportunity to throw this guy under the bus for cheating on her, but she confirmed he was there at home.
There wasn't anything to indicate that Rico or his wife had been untruthful or that they had done something to Shondell.
With Rico and his wife officially cleared from any involvement in Shondell's disappearance, detectives are left with Joyce Pelzer as the only suspect. But they still need more evidence.
We checked our credit cards, seen that last time it was used at a gas station in Gwinnett County, right on the line of DeKalb County. So I went out there and so happened to had videos of that pump, so we was able to see Shondell heading to work, getting gas in her car.
She never actually made it inside her place of employment. A working theory at that point was that Shondell had been kidnapped somewhere in between. So at this point in the investigation, police certainly have strong suspicions that something bad has happened and that Joyce and Rosalind know more about it than they're letting on.
I tried to get a warrant on him, but the DA wanted more. We didn't have a body. We know she was missing. We know foul play was in play, but we just needed a little more.
Detective Guest pursued this case for 7 years, keeping up with leads for all these years, and always thinking that Joyce Pelzer had some involvement.
Conyers police investigating Rosalind's murder question why would Joyce have reason to hurt her wife 7 years after Shondell.
Joyce was able to get away with what she did for years, but she knew that Rosalind knew what she did. Their relationship is troubled just like Shondell and Joyce's relationship was troubled. And she has a pattern of not allowing people to leave her, not allowing people to move on, and retaliating against anyone who broke up with her or hurt her.
Over the 7 years before the murder of Rosalind Lewis, Georgia investigators worked diligently to close the case on Shondell McLeod's disappearance.
It was hard on the family. I'm a parent myself. If something was to happen to my kids, I would want that investigator, that police officer, to exhaust all avenues.
Those efforts included keeping tabs on their prime suspect, Joyce Pelzer.
Detective Guest doesn't give up. He continues to have the media cover the case on Shondell's birthday every year, see if he could generate some information from the public.
Detectives believe Joyce got rid of Shondell once she realized she couldn't control her. And similar issues emerged shortly after her marriage to Rosalind in 2016.
Rosalind found out that Joyce was cheating, and she was not happy with that, of course.
I had been doing interviews with a lot of Joyce family members. They pretty much told me that Joyce had a new girlfriend. I did some workup on her and found out who she was.
Joyce's latest affair was with a woman named Katie Long in August of 2018.
It took me a minute, but I tracked down Miss Long. She was in Clearwater, Florida, and she said, "I've been waiting on you to call me." She told me she had some things for me to hear.
Katie told investigators about a conversation she had with Joyce a year before Rosalind's murder.
She got real quiet, and I asked her what was wrong. And she said, "I have to tell you something." And she said, "I knocked off my ex-girlfriend." And I said, "Who?" And she said, "Shondell." And I said, "Knocked her off, meaning?" And she said, "Katie, I killed my ex-girlfriend." She said, "I just feel like I can talk to you and that this is something that you needed to know so that you know who you're dealing with." And I said, "Well, who am I dealing with?" And she said, "I am not a good person, Katie."
But they don't have evidence of an actual crime being committed. They have nothing concrete to prove that Shondell has been kidnapped, hurt, or murdered.
Following her interview, Katie agreed to help detectives get the evidence they needed.
Katie is starting to realize the type of person she's in bed with, and she truthfully is scared.
Katie records Joyce in their phone conversations. Joyce is making statements about why she did what she did. She makes statements about implicating Rosalind and that she seems basically to express fear that Rosalind's going to go to police. Katie reached out to DeKalb County Police, to Detective Guest, in December of 2018 and was very concerned about threats that Joyce was making about Rosalind. She was going to point it all towards Rosalind.
As Conyers police finish reviewing the Shondell McLeod case, the reason for Rosalind's stabbing comes into sharper focus. Despite the violent threats from Joyce, Rosalind agreed to meet her in that hotel room on December 10th with the intent to end their marriage.
They had talked back and forth, and I think Joyce thought there was some room for reconciliation between her and Roz. When Roz began telling her that she had filed for divorce, Joyce snapped.
Joyce's world was falling apart. I think that she was completely paranoid and scared that the ball was going to drop any day and that she was finally going to be held responsible for Shondel's murder and that Rosalind was going to be the reason.
But before Joyce can be charged with any crimes, investigators need to find her.
We went up on an exigent request for services with a phone company, and they began to ping Joyce Pelzer's cell phone live. And the first ping that we got indicated that she was heading south toward Florida. Katie Long lives in Florida.
I immediately asked the sergeant to notify Georgia State Patrol and all agencies that would be on I-75 toward Florida to try to apprehend the suspect before she reached Florida and did violence to another person.
Georgia investigators have notified State Patrol and federal marshals to be on the lookout for Joyce Pelzer. 3 days after she allegedly stabbed her wife Rosalind, Joyce is spotted heading south on I-75.
We were notified by Georgia State Patrol Dispatch that they had made contact with a car in Crisp County.
They initiated their emergency equipment to try to conduct a traffic stop. Joyce failed to yield to the traffic stop and continued traveling at high rates of speed. Georgia State Patrol performed a pit maneuver, which is a precision immobilization technique on the vehicle to try to stop the vehicle before she caused any more harm.
There's dust, dirt all in the air. The sirens are still going. The officers are running up, surrounding the car, trying not to create crossfire. They've got their guns drawn. And as soon as it clears enough, they see her raise a gun. And that's a threat to the officers. And they fired.
The troopers fire into her vehicle. They're able to take her into custody. She's transported to the hospital where she's treated, but there was no significant trauma.
Once Joyce recovered from her wounds at the hospital there, she was then transported to Rockdale County Jail. Myself and crime scene investigator began searching Joyce Pelzer's vehicle. We were able to locate the bloody clothing along with a knife believed to have been used during the attack on Rosalind.
When Joyce is confronted with the evidence, she confesses to the assault.
December of 2019, Joyce decided to negotiate a plea with the Rockdale District Attorney's Office, and she pled guilty to the murder of Rosalind Lewis.
She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole for the incident that occurred in Rockdale County.
Detectives are hoping she will do the same regarding the suspected murder of Shondell McLeod.
Detective Guest comes to interview her, and this is someone who has pursued this case for 7 years at this point, keeping up with the family, keeping up with leads, and always thinking that Joyce Pelzer had some involvement.
We spoke for about an hour and a half, and she confessed to being there when Shondell was killed. But Joyce said she had nothing to do with it. Joyce said it was Rosalind. Roz was upset that Shondell gave her herpes, and she transmitted it to Rosalind. So Rosalind wanted revenge for that. She said that Roz hired a few guys. They drugged her, put her in the car, and buried the body in Arabian Mountain Park.
What Joyce doesn't realize is that investigators know she's lying.
We had a phone call, a recorded phone call between Joyce and Katie, where she laid out her plan to tell Detective Guest this very story, and she followed through with that plan.
Joyce's whole story was that she was afraid of Roz. That Roz was the violent type in this relationship, and doing all my investigation, that's not true.
Shondell wanted to move on from Joyce Pelzer, and that was something that Joyce Pelzer was not going to accept and was not going to allow to happen.
When she faces trial in 2023 for the murder of Shondell McLeod, Joyce's attorneys argue the state has insufficient evidence to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt.
The defense for Joyce Pelzer was that since there's no body here, there's not enough evidence to show that Joyce was the one that did it. And they leaned into implicating Rosalind Lewis in the murder of Shondell McLeod.
Prosecutors use Joyce's ex-girlfriend, Katie Long, to refute those claims.
Katie Long's testimony was so impactful. She didn't share friends with Joyce or Rosalind, but she had these details that she would only have if she had gotten them from Joyce. And then when we played that recorded phone call, and when the jury listened to her hatching her plan to frame Rosalind, the air changed in the courtroom. I felt like it was over. Joyce was convicted of both malice murder and felony murder. After the trial, the judge sentenced Joyce Pelzer to life without the possibility of parole.
The most bizarre thing of this case is the amount of hatred and violence that could be built up into one person is just very disturbing to me, that a person could be that way.
Prison is not good enough for her. Shondell's life was took too soon. Shondell was the most kindest person I ever met.
Rosalind should be remembered as a person who saw the good, who loved with her whole heart. To have known her was truly an experience and a joy of life that so many won't get to experience because
understanding the
she isn't
intricate
here anymore.
dynamics of interpersonal relationships
But those who knew
requires
her
a deep
can cherish
examination
that for a
of human
lifetime.
behavior, control, and the tragic consequences that arise when affection transforms into obsession. The cases surrounding the lives of Rosalind Lewis and Shondell McLeod present a profound and sobering look into the psychological patterns of domestic manipulation and the devastating results of unresolved possessiveness. These tragedies do not occur in a vacuum. Rather, they are often the culmination of long-standing behavioral patterns that, to the outside observer, may remain hidden behind a facade of normalcy. By analyzing these events, we can glean vital insights into the psychological motives of perpetrators, the specific indicators that law enforcement relies upon to solve complex cases, and the structural ways in which society and policing can adapt to prevent such outcomes in the future. To understand why these tragedies occur with disturbing frequency, one must examine the psychological construct of ownership within toxic relationships. In many cases of domestic harm, the underlying motive is not a sudden loss of control, but rather an extreme desire to maintain control at all costs. When a perpetrator perceives that their partner is attempting to assert independence or terminate the relationship, the threat of abandonment triggers a severe psychological crisis. For individuals with highly controlling personalities, the partner is viewed not as an autonomous person with free will, but as a possession. This leads to the dangerous rationale that if the perpetrator cannot have the victim, then no one else will be permitted to either. This pathology explains why separations and divorces are statistically the most dangerous times for victims of domestic abuse. The act of leaving is a direct challenge to the perpetrator's perceived dominance, often prompting an escalation from verbal and emotional abuse to physical retaliation. In the case of Joyce Pelzer, this pattern of behavior was demonstrated repeatedly across multiple relationships over the course of several years. Both Shondell McLeod and Rosalind Lewis experienced the transition from what initially appeared to be a supportive, spontaneous partnership into a highly restrictive and abusive environment. Shondell had described an environment of emotional, verbal, and physical abuse, characterized by extreme isolation, where the perpetrator attempted to sever the victim's connections with friends and family. This behavior is a classic tactic used to weaken the victim's support system, making them more dependent on the abuser and less likely to find the resources or courage to leave. When Shondell finally broke free, the pattern did not stop. Instead, it transitioned into stalking and harassment, illustrating that the desire for control persists long after the physical relationship has ended. Years later, a remarkably similar dynamic unfolded with Rosalind, who ultimately sought a divorce after discovering infidelity, triggering the final, tragic confrontation in a hotel room in Conyers, Georgia. The frequency of these cases is also exacerbated by societal and systemic challenges. Often, victims of domestic coercive control find it incredibly difficult to navigate the legal and social systems designed to protect them. While protective orders exist, they are sometimes treated by highly determined perpetrators as mere pieces of paper rather than deterrents. Furthermore, the subtle nature of emotional abuse and stalking means that early warning signs are frequently dismissed by outsiders as simple relationship drama, rather than the precursors to severe violence. The facade of a happy marriage or a normal partnership can easily deceive friends, neighbors, and even family members who only see the couple during moments of superficial harmony. This discrepancy between the public image and the private reality allows the abusive behavior to escalate in secrecy until it reaches a critical and dangerous flashpoint. When investigating these complex cases, law enforcement agencies rely on a combination of traditional detective work and modern technology to piece together the truth. In the pursuit of the perpetrator after the tragedy in Conyers, several critical details and clues proved pivotal. The first and most immediate clue was the dying declaration of the victim. Under legal frameworks, a dying declaration is considered highly reliable evidence because of the solemnity of the circumstances. Before succumbing to her injuries, Rosalind clearly identified her spouse as the individual responsible for the assault. This crucial piece of information immediately established a primary suspect and allowed the Conyers Police Department to focus their resources without delay, bypassing the initial ambiguity that often stalls homicide investigations. Beyond the victim's statement, physical and digital evidence played an indispensable role in tracking the suspect. At the scene of the crime, the presence of specific forensic details, such as the pattern of footwear impressions left on the pavement, provided immediate insight into the suspect's flight. Witnesses noted that the suspect fled without shoes, wearing only socks, a detail that matched the bloody impressions found outside the hotel room. Additionally, the quick thinking of the hotel staff and witnesses provided a partial vehicle description and license plate number. In the modern era of policing, this information is immediately entered into national databases, allowing law enforcement across various jurisdictions to coordinate their efforts. The most sophisticated tool utilized by investigators in this case, however, was digital forensics, specifically the real-time tracking of mobile phone data. By requesting emergency assistance from the telecommunications provider, a process often reserved for situations involving an active threat to public safety. Detectives were able to obtain geographic location updates for the suspect's phone. This electronic trail revealed that the suspect was traveling south on Interstate 75, heading toward Florida. This digital tracking allowed the Georgia State Patrol and federal marshals to position themselves strategically, ultimately intercepting the vehicle in Crisp County. The use of the precision immobilization technique by state troopers successfully stopped the vehicle, preventing further flight and ensuring the suspect could be taken into custody before reaching another state or posing a danger to others. While the physical apprehension of the suspect was accomplished within days of the incident in 2018, solving the 7-year-old cold case of Shondell McLeod's disappearance required a much more complex analysis of criminal sophistication and the loopholes that ultimately led to the perpetrator's downfall. Sophisticated criminals often attempt to construct elaborate alibis, manipulate witnesses, and plant misleading evidence to divert suspicion. In the immediate aftermath of Shondell's disappearance in September of 2011, the perpetrator sought to establish a seamless alibi by claiming to have been at home with Rosalind for the entire weekend. This narrative was initially supported by Rosalind, who, out of loyalty or coercion, provided a matching statement to the investigators. The perpetrator also attempted to exploit the lack of a physical crime scene by suggesting that Shondell had simply left the country to return to Guyana, capitalizing on the fact that no body had been found. In many missing persons cases, the absence of a body presents a monumental challenge for prosecutors, as they must first prove that a crime has actually occurred before they can prosecute someone for it. By suggesting a voluntary departure, the suspect hoped that law enforcement would eventually classify the case as inactive. Furthermore, the presence of a man's watch, shot glasses, and cigarette butts at Shondell's residence suggested the involvement of an alternative individual, briefly drawing investigators' attention toward a local delivery driver named Rico. However, the apparent sophistication of this scheme was ultimately undermined by the perpetrator's own logistical errors and the relentless scrutiny of Detective Henry Guest. The primary loophole in the alibi was revealed through the analysis of cellular phone records. While the suspect and Rosalind claimed to have spent the weekend together at home, a detailed review of their respective phone bills showed a high volume of calls and text messages exchanged between their devices during that exact time frame. Logically, two people sharing a residence and spending the weekend together would have no need to call or text one another repeatedly. This discrepancy completely shattered the alibi, proving to investigators that both individuals had lied about their whereabouts. Furthermore, the thorough elimination of alternative suspects demonstrated the importance of systematic police work. By interviewing the delivery driver and verifying his timeline with his spouse, detectives were able to confirm that while he had been at the residence earlier, he was entirely uninvolved in the disappearance. This left the perpetrator as the sole individual with a clear motive and a fabricated story. Despite these findings, the lack of physical evidence or a body prevented immediate prosecution in 2011, highlighting the limitations that investigators face when a case relies primarily on circumstantial evidence. The true breakthrough in the cold case came years later through the cooperation of a citizen informant named Katie Long. The psychology of a perpetrator often includes a desire to boast or a need to confide in someone, driven by a mixture of arrogance and guilt. Believing she had successfully evaded justice for 7 years, the suspect confided in Katie during a moment of vulnerability, explicitly admitting to the previous crime. Recognizing the dangerous nature of the individual she was involved with, Katie made the courageous decision to contact law enforcement and assist them by recording subsequent telephone conversations. These recorded conversations expose the depth of the perpetrator's manipulation and lack of remorse. In the recordings, the suspect could be heard actively plotting to frame Rosalind for the disappearance of Shondell, attempting to construct a narrative where Rosalind was the instigator of the crime. This reveal was crucial because it demonstrated the suspect's pattern of using and discarding partners to shield herself from legal consequences. When the recordings were played in court during the 2023 trial, they provided the jury with direct, undeniable evidence of the suspect's guilt and her calculated attempt to manipulate the justice system. The contrast between her calm, plotting voice on the recordings and her claims of innocence shattered her defense, leading to her conviction for malice murder, despite the absence of a body. Drawing life lessons from these tragic events is essential for preventing future occurrences of domestic escalation. The first and most critical lesson is the importance of recognizing the early warning signs of coercive control and obsessive behavior. Abuse is rarely limited to physical violence. Indeed, it often begins with subtle forms of manipulation, such as monitoring a partner's communications, dictating who they can socialize with, or expressing extreme jealousy. These behaviors should not be romanticized as intense affection or protectiveness. Instead, they must be recognized as attempts to diminish a partner's autonomy. Community members, friends, and family must be educated on how to identify these red flags and how to offer support to individuals who may feel trapped in controlling relationships. Another vital lesson is the necessity of creating safe pathways for individuals wishing to exit abusive partnerships. Because the period immediately following a breakup or a demand for divorce is the most hazardous, safety planning is paramount. Victims should be encouraged to seek assistance from domestic violence advocates, secure their personal documents, change their passwords, and, when necessary, establish temporary residency in secure, undisclosed locations. Relying solely on a legal protective order may not be sufficient when dealing with a highly volatile individual. A comprehensive safety plan, combined with community support, can provide the critical buffer needed to prevent a confrontational escalation. For law enforcement, these cases offer valuable insights into how investigations can be expedited to catch perpetrators more rapidly. One key area of improvement is the integration of cross-jurisdictional data sharing. In many instances, a suspect will cross county or state lines to evade capture, as occurred when the suspect fled south toward Florida. When local police departments, state patrols, and federal agencies can access real-time database updates and tracking information seamlessly, the window of opportunity for a suspect to escape is drastically reduced. Implementing automated license plate readers on major highways and integrating them with active law enforcement alerts can allow patrols to intercept fleeing suspects within minutes of an incident. Additionally, the rapid deployment of digital forensics is crucial in modern investigations. In the critical hours following a major crime, obtaining immediate access to call logs, cell site location information, and text messages can prevent a suspect from destroying evidence or establishing a false alibi, while respecting constitutional protections and obtaining the necessary legal authorizations, streamlining the process for securing emergency warrants for digital data can save lives, particularly when a suspect is actively fleeing or when a missing person's location is unknown. Had the digital forensics of 2011 been processed with the speed and integration available today, the resolution of Shondel's case might not have required a 7-year wait. To provide a comprehensive view of how these separate paths intersected, we must trace the narrative in detail, examining the lives of the individuals involved, the progression of the relationships, and the methodical work of the officers who refused to let these cases go unsolved. The journey begins with the early life of Rosalind Lewis, born in New Orleans, Louisiana, on August 31, 1971. Growing up in a warm, nurturing household under the guidance of loving parents, Rosalind was raised in an environment that prioritized care, laughter, and mutual respect. She was known to her family and peers as a source of joy, a person who never met a stranger and whose vibrant smile could brighten any room. Her cultural background in New Orleans instilled in her a natural warmth, leading her to treat everyone she met avec kindness and affection. After completing her education, Rosalind entered the healthcare field, working in medical billing and administrative roles. Her compassionate nature made her particularly well-suited for working with elderly patients, to whom she brought comfort and happiness. In her mid-20s, Rosalind began navigating her personal identity, sharing with her family that she was a lesbian. While this revelation met mixed reactions within her deeply religious and traditional family, the fundamental bond of love between Rosalind and her parents remained unbroken. Her father, in particular, maintained a close relationship with her, calling her frequently to ensure her well-being. Seeking new opportunities and a fresh environment, Rosalind decided to relocate to Atlanta, Georgia, in the early 1990s. It was in Atlanta that she established a career at a medical call center and eventually crossed paths with Joyce Pelzer. Initially, Joyce appeared to be an ideal partner. She was educated, well-spoken, adventurous, and seemingly highly put together. For Rosalind, who cherished spontaneity and travel, Joyce's adventurous spirit was a significant draw. The two began dating, and after several years, decided to solemnize their relationship, marrying on a beach in the year 2016. Although some family members chose not to attend the ceremony due to their personal beliefs, they sincerely hoped that Rosalind had found lasting happiness. To external observers, the couple's life appeared harmonious and full of shared laughter. However, behind this peaceful exterior, a parallel history of control and violence lay hidden. Years before meeting Rosalind, Joyce had been in a relationship with Shondel McLeod. Shondel, originally from Guyana, had moved with her family to New York before eventually settling in Atlanta. She was exceptionally close to her mother and siblings, serving as a dependable pillar of support for her family. Shondel possessed a deep passion for culinary arts, which led her to secure a position as a cook at a care facility in Gwinnett County. It was at this workplace that she met Joyce, and their initial friendship eventually developed into a romantic relationship. The relationship quickly deteriorated as Joyce's desire for dominance manifested in severe emotional, verbal, and physical abuse. Shondel's mother became a confidante for her daughter, listening to accounts of Joyce's erratic and controlling behavior. The situation was further complicated by Shondel's suspicion that Joyce was being unfaithful, specifically with Rosalind, whom Joyce had begun seeing concurrently. In 2011, Shondell gathered the strength to terminate the relationship and remove Joyce from her home. The termination of the relationship did not bring peace. Joyce began a campaign of intense stalking, contacting Shondell's friends, following her movements, and refusing to accept the separation. In a dramatic act of retaliation, Joyce entered Shondell's home during her absence and stripped the residence of its contents, leaving the victim to sleep on an air mattress. This escalation culminated in a terrifying incident where Shondell awoke in the middle of the night to find Joyce standing over her, holding a weapon and issuing threats that if she could not possess Shondell, no one else would. Terrified for her safety, Shondell sought a temporary protective order from the court in July of 2011, expressing a sincere fear for her life. On Sunday, September 25, 2011, the fears of Shondell's family were realized when she failed to appear for a family dinner and did not report for her morning shift at work. Knowing her reliable nature, her mother immediately contacted the police. Because of her adult status, the initial classification of the case faced standard administrative delays. But after 48 hours with no contact, the investigation was assigned to Detective Henry Guest. Recognizing the severity of the situation and the history of threats, Detective Guest immediately sought to locate and interview Joyce. When Joyce appeared for questioning, she brought Rosalind with her. Throughout the interview, Joyce maintained a detached, unemotional demeanor, claiming that her past relationship with Shondell was amicable and that the allegations of abuse were entirely fabricated. She suggested that Shondell had simply chosen to leave her life behind and return to her native country. To solidify her defense, Joyce provided an alibi, asserting that she had remained at Pfaff home with Rosalind for the entirety of the weekend in question. Rosalind, during her separate interview, corroborated this timeline, stating that they had chosen to stay indoors and relax together. Despite the unified front presented by the two women, Detective Guest remained skeptical. He initiated a thorough review of the suspect's employment records, discovering that she had failed to report for work on the Monday following the disappearance, directly contradicting her statement. More importantly, the detective secured a search warrant for the cellular phone records of both Joyce and Rosalind. The subsequent analysis of the cell tower data and call logs dismantled the alibi. The records demonstrated that not only were the phones not at the shared residence during key periods of the weekend, but the two women had also exchanged numerous calls and text messages. A physical impossibility had they been together in the same room as claimed. At the same time, the physical search of Shondell's home revealed clues that required careful elimination. Investigators discovered a man's watch on the bedroom floor, alongside shot glasses and cigarette butts. Knowing Shondell did not smoke or drink heavily, these items suggested a visitor had been present. The investigation led to Rico, a delivery driver who had engaged in a flirtatious relationship with Shondell. Under questioning, Rico admitted to visiting the home on the night of September 24th, explaining that the items left behind were his. His timeline and alibi were subsequently verified by his spouse, who, despite the personal distress of learning about the infidelity, confirmed his presence at home during the critical hours of Shondell's disappearance. This meticulous verification allowed detectives to officially eliminate Rico from the suspect pool, leaving Joyce as the sole person of interest. Despite the strong circumstantial evidence and the clear falsehoods in the suspect's statements, the lack of a physical crime scene or a body meant that the district attorney's office was unwilling to file formal charges at that time. For 7 years, the case remained unresolved, though Detective Guest continued to keep the investigation active, using media coverage on Shondel's birthday to generate new leads and maintain public awareness. During these intervening years, the relationship between Joyce and Rosalind continued, culminating in their beach wedding in 2016. However, the destructive patterns that had characterized Joyce's past behavior inevitably reemerged. Rosalind discovered that Joyce was engaging in another extramarital affair, this time with a woman named Katie Long in Florida. Unwilling to tolerate the infidelity and control, Rosalind made the decision to seek a divorce. This decision triggered the same path of paranoia and retaliatory intent that Joyce had exhibited 7 years prior. Fearing that a divorce would lead to the dissolution of her life and potentially the exposure of her past actions, Joyce's behavior became increasingly volatile. Rosalind, unaware of the full extent of the danger but determined to end the marriage, agreed to meet Joyce at a hotel in Conyers, Georgia, on December 10, 2018, to finalize their separation. On that morning, hotel guests reported hearing screams for help emanating from one of the rooms. A maintenance worker knocked on the door but received no response. As the hotel manager contacted emergency services, the door opened, and Rosalind collapsed onto the exterior walkway, suffering from severe physical trauma. The suspect fled the scene, heading toward the rear parking lot. When first responders arrived, they found Rosalind in a critical state. Despite her extreme weakness and severe blood loss, she used her final moments to identify her spouse, Joyce, as the person who had assaulted her. Rosalind was transported to the hospital, where, despite the best efforts of medical personnel, she passed away. The investigation into Rosalind's death immediately merged with the active tracking of Joyce. Analysts conducting background searches quickly identified the suspect's connection to the 2011 missing person case, highlighting her dangerous nature. Utilizing cellular pings, law enforcement tracked the suspect's vehicle as it sped south on Interstate 75. Georgia State Patrol troopers successfully executed a precision immobilization technique to halt the vehicle in Crisp County. After a brief standoff during which the suspect brandished a weapon, officers took her into custody. A subsequent search of the vehicle recovered key physical evidence, including a weapon and stained clothing. Faced with the overwhelming evidence of the hotel assault, Joyce eventually chose to plead guilty to the murder of Rosalind Lewis in December of 2019, receiving a sentence of life in prison with the possibility of parole. However, the resolution of Shondell McLeod's disappearance remained outstanding. Detective Guest traveled to interview Joyce in prison, hoping to finally secure the truth for Shondell's grieving family. During the interview, Joyce attempted one final manipulation. She admitted to being present during the events that led to Shondell's death, but claimed that Rosalind was the sole perpetrator, motivated by a personal grievance. She asserted that Rosalind had hired individuals to abduct Shondell and had buried her body in Arabian Mountain Park. What the suspect did not realize was that investigators had already obtained proof of her deception. Prior to the confrontation, detectives had interviewed Katie Long in Florida. Katie revealed that Joyce had confessed to Shondell's murder a year before the attack on Rosalind. Furthermore, Katie had cooperated with police by recording their phone conversations. In these recordings, Joyce was heard explicitly detailing her plan to frame Rosalind for the 2011 crime. Assuming that because Rosalind was now deceased, she could safely bear the blame. When Joyce faced trial in 2023 for the murder of Shondell McLeod, her defense argued that the lack of a body and the allegations against Rosalind created reasonable doubt. However, the prosecution presented the recorded phone conversations, which demonstrated the suspect's calculated plot to fabricate the accusation against her deceased wife. This evidence, combined with the powerful testimony of Katie Long, convinced the jury of the suspect's guilt. Joyce Pelzer was convicted of malice murder and felony murder, and the court sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that she would never again pose a threat to others. The resolution of these cases, though marred by profound loss, stands as a testament to the dedication of the law enforcement officers who refuse to let a cold case be forgotten. It highlights the power of modern forensic tools, the critical role of citizen cooperation, and the enduring importance of seeking justice for victims. The memory of Rosalind Lewis and Shondell McLeod remains honored by the truth that was ultimately brought to light, serving as a powerful warning of the dangers of possessive control and a reminder of the resilience of those who fight for justice. The complexity of human relationships often presents a dual reality where the outward projection of harmony masks a deep and troubling undercurrent of control. In quiet suburban neighborhoods and modern metropolitan areas, domestic lives are constructed on foundations that appear normal to the casual observer, yet can sometimes harbor a quiet and progressive toxicity. To understand why such tragic cases occur with disturbing frequency, one must examine the psychological mechanisms of coercive control, possessiveness, and the desperate measures an individual will take to preserve a false reality. When relationships are built not on mutual respect, but on a desire for absolute dominance, the eventual attempt by one partner to reclaim their autonomy often triggers a volatile reaction. The cases of Rosalind Lewis and Shondell McLeod, both of whom were tragically linked to a single individual named Joyce Pelzer, offer a profound and sobering study of these dynamics. Their experiences highlight not only the devastating consequences of unchecked relational hostility, but also the relentless pursuit of justice by law enforcement, and the crucial lessons that communities must absorb to prevent such tragedies in the future. The journey to understand these events begins in the state of Georgia, where, on the morning of December 10, 2018, a quiet motel in the municipality of Conyers became the center of a rapid emergency response. A maintenance worker performing routine duties heard desperate cries for assistance emanating from one of the guest rooms. The distress was clear, with the voice indicating a severe physical confrontation occurring inside the room. Sensing the extreme urgency of the situation, the hotel management contacted the emergency dispatch services using the telephone number 911. As the manager was communicating with the emergency operator, the door to the room opened, and Rosalind Lewis, who was 47 years old, fell onto the exterior walkway. She had sustained numerous severe physical wounds and was experiencing extreme physical trauma. The responding emergency medical technicians quickly arrived at the scene and began administering cardiopulmonary resuscitation and other advanced life support measures. Despite their rapid intervention, Rosalind went into cardiac arrest while in transit to the hospital and unfortunately passed away from her injuries. Before she succumbed to her wounds, Rosalind was able to provide a vital piece of information to the first responding police officer, identifying her wife, Joyce Pelzer, as the person who had physically attacked her. This dying declaration immediately transformed a medical emergency into a high-priority homicide investigation. When officers secured the crime scene, they discovered that the physical environment bore the unmistakable signs of a violent struggle. There were physical marks on the doorway and the interior walls that suggested a desperate attempt by the victim to escape her assailant. The responding detectives from the Conyers Police Department immediately began gathering physical and digital evidence to piece together the events that led to this tragic outcome. The first breakthrough in the tracking of the suspect came from a meticulous review of the motel security camera footage. The video showed that during the time frame of the altercation, the window curtains of the room moved erratically, indicating a significant physical struggle taking place just inside the window. Shortly after the maintenance worker knocked on the door and temporarily stepped away, the camera captured the victim falling onto the walkway, followed immediately by the suspect exiting the room and walking calmly toward the rear parking lot. The suspect was observed wearing only socks on her feet, having discarded her shoes during or prior to her flight. This detail was later confirmed by crime scene investigators who found footwear impressions on the concrete walkway that were highly consistent with fabric socks rather than hard soles. The witness accounts also indicated that the suspect fled the premises in a dark-colored sedan, bearing out-of-state license plates that featured the digits 307. As law enforcement issued regional alerts for the suspect and her vehicle, analysts at the police headquarters conducted an extensive backgrounds on Joyce Pelzer to determine a potential motive and to assess the level of danger she posed to the community. What they uncovered was a chilling historical connection that immediately elevated the urgency of the search. The database revealed that Joyce Pelzer had been the primary person of interest in a cold case involving the disappearance of another woman, Shondell McLeod, who had vanished 7 years earlier in September of 2011 in neighboring DeKalb County. This discovery suggested that the attack on Rosalind Lewis was not an isolated incident of sudden anger, but rather part of a larger, long-standing pattern of extreme possessiveness and violence. To comprehend the full scope of this pattern, it is necessary to examine the events of 2011, when 35-year-old Shondell McLeod was reported missing. Shondell, who was originally from Guyana, was a beloved member of a large and close-knit family that had relocated to New York before settling in Atlanta. She was a professional chef who took immense pride in her culinary career, working as the head cook at a senior care facility in Gwinnett County. Her family described her as a warm, generous, and highly responsible individual who maintained daily contact with her mother and siblings. On Sunday, September 25, 2011, Shondell failed to arrive for her scheduled morning shift at the care facility, and she did not attend the traditional Sunday evening dinner that her family gathered for every week. Her family immediately recognized that this absolute lack of communication was entirely uncharacteristic of her, prompting her mother to contact the local police department. The subsequent investigation, led by Detective Henry Guest of the DeKalb County Police Department, quickly revealed that Shondell had recently ended a highly turbulent and abusive relationship with Joyce Pelzer. Family members and colleagues reported that during their time together, Joyce had exhibited an intense desire for control, subjecting Shondell to continuous emotional, verbal, and physical abuse. Joyce was highly possessive, attempting to isolate Shondell from her supportive family network and demanding that she terminate friendships that Joyce did not approve of. Despite this rigid expectation of loyalty, evidence suggested that Joyce was simultaneously engaging in outside relationships, including one with Rosalind Lewis, when Shondell courageously decided to break free from this toxic environment and reclaim her life. Joyce's behavior escalated to systematic stalking and intimidation. In one particularly absurd and petty demonstration of hostility, Joyce entered Shondell's home during her absence and removed almost all the contents of the house, including the furniture, light fixtures, and even the toilet seats, leaving Shondell to sleep on a temporary air mattress. This action, while seemingly ridiculous, was a clear attempt to completely strip the victim of her comfort and dignity. The harassment reached a terrifying peak when Shondell woke up in the middle of the night to find Joyce standing directly over her bed, holding a dangerous weapon, and declaring that if she could not possess her, no one else would. In July of 2011, Shondell sought legal protection by obtaining a temporary protective order from the local court, expressing to her family a profound fear for her life. Tragically, her fears were realized on that Sunday morning in September, when she disappeared without a trace. When Detective Henry Guest initiated his investigation into the disappearance of Shondell, Joyce Pelzer was brought in for questioning. The detective noted that during the interview, Joyce displayed an unsettling lack of emotional response or concern for the welfare of her former partner. She claimed that the relationship had been entirely normal, with only the standard disagreements that any couple might experience, and suggested that Shondell had simply chosen to leave her family and return to Guyana. To validate her whereabouts on the weekend of the disappearance, Joyce presented an alibi, claiming that she had spent the entire weekend at home resting alongside her new partner, Rosalind Lewis. When investigators interviewed Rosalind, she corroborated this story, stating that they had both remained indoors for the duration of the weekend and had even taken the following Monday off from work to simply relax together. However, the alibi constructed by Joyce and supported by Rosalind began to dissolve under careful investigative scrutiny. Detective Guest contacted Joyce's employer and discovered that she had falsified her attendance records, having failed to report to work on the Monday following the disappearance, despite her claims. Furthermore, the detectives obtained a search warrant for the cellular telephone records of both Joyce and Rosalind. The subsurface analysis of the communication metadata revealed that not only were they active in entirely different geographical locations during the weekend in question, but they had also exchanged numerous telephone calls and text messages. This objective digital evidence conclusively proved that they were not together resting at Moth Home as they had claimed. Despite the clear indications that Joyce and Rosalind had provided false statements to the authorities, the physical investigation faced a significant legal obstacle. Shortly after the disappearance, Atlanta police officers located Shondell's vehicle abandoned approximately 40 miles from her residence, showing clear signs of physical damage. However, despite extensive search efforts, including the utilization of specialized search teams and canine units in the rural areas around Arabia Mountain, Shondell's physical remains were never recovered. Under the legal standards of the time, the district attorney determined that there was insufficient physical evidence to secure a conviction for homicide without a body, and the case of Shondell McLeod unfortunately went cold, leaving her family without closure for 7 years. In the intervening years, Joyce Pelzer and Rosalind Lewis continued to build a life together, eventually marrying on a beach in the year 2016. To external observers, they appeared to have moved past the shadow of the 2011 investigation, establishing a seemingly stable household. Yet, the psychology of a shared secret is inherently unstable. When two individuals are bound by a mutual deception, the power dynamic is permanently skewed, creating a fragile piece that can easily be shattered by any shift in the relationship. As time progressed, the marriage began to deteriorate under the weight of the same toxic behaviors that had characterized Joyce's past relationships. Rosalind discovered that Joyce was engaging in another outside relationship, this time with a woman named Katie Long in Florida, which occurred in the summer of 2018. Rosalind's decision to seek a formal separation and divorce became the catalyst for the final tragic sequence of events. For Joyce Pelzer, the prospect of Rosalind leaving her was not merely a relational rejection, but a direct threat to her liberty. Joyce was acutely aware that Rosalind possessed complete knowledge of the circumstances surrounding the disappearance of Shondell McLeod. The fear that Rosalind would expose this long-held secret to the authorities, combined with Joyce's pathological need for control, generated a profound state of paranoia. Joyce became convinced that the legal separation would lead to her ultimate exposure and arrest for the 2011 crime. The investigation into Rosalind's murder received a critical boost when detectives made contact with Katie Long in Florida. Katie revealed that during her relationship with Joyce in the year 2018, Joyce had exhibited signs of intense psychological distress. In a moment of unprompted vulnerability, Joyce had confessed to Katie that she was not a good person and explicitly stated that she had taken the life of her former partner, Shondell McLeod. Realizing the extreme danger of her situation, Katie made the courageous decision to cooperate with the DeKalb County Police Department and Detective Guest. She agreed to record her telephone conversations with Joyce, capturing vital admissions that would eventually prove central to the prosecution. In these recorded conversations, Joyce's paranoia regarding Rosalind was laid bare. She expressed an intense fear that Rosalind was going to reveal the details of the 2011 homicide to the police. Joyce detailed a calculated plan to preemptively silence Rosalind and subsequently construct a narrative that would place the entire blame for Shondell's death onto Rosalind. Despite these terrifying developments, Rosalind, unaware of the extreme level of danger she was in, agreed to meet Joyce at the motel in Conyers on December 10, 2018, with the intention of finalizing their divorce. It was during this meeting that Joyce, realizing she could no longer control Rosalind or guarantee her silence, launched the physical attack that resulted in Rosalind's tragic death. Following the assault, the law enforcement apparatus moved with exceptional speed, utilizing real-time cellular telephone tracking and tower ping technology. The Conyers Police Department and the Georgia State Patrol monitored Joyce's movement as she fled south along Interstate 75, clearly attempting to reach Florida where Katie Long resided. The authorities recognized that Joyce represented an immediate and severe threat to anyone she encountered, particularly Katie. State troopers and federal marshals were positioned along the interstate corridor, and a visual contact was established with her vehicle in Crisp County. When troopers initiated their emergency lights and sirens to conduct a high-speed traffic stop, Joyce refused to yield, accelerating to extreme speeds in a desperate bid to evade capture. To prevent any potential harm to innocent motorists on the busy highway, a state trooper executed a precision immobilization technique, striking the rear of Joyce's vehicle and causing it to spin out of control into the median. As the dust cleared, heavily armed officers surrounded the vehicle, instructing Joyce to surrender. Instead, she raised a firearm toward the officers, prompting them to discharge their service weapons. Joyce sustained non-fatal injuries during the confrontation and was transported to a local medical center under heavy guard. During a subsequent search of Joyce's vehicle, crime scene technicians recovered the physical weapon used in the attack on Rosalind, along with clothing that bore significant trace evidence. Face-to-face with the overwhelming physical evidence and her own recorded admissions, Joyce realized that her legal options were severely limited. In December of 2019, she entered a negotiated guilty plea to the murder of Rosalind Lewis in Rockdale County and was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. However, the resolution of Rosalind's case was only the first step in achieving complete justice. With Joyce secured in a correctional facility, Detective Henry Guest and the prosecutors from the DeKalb County District Attorney's Office turned their full attention to resolving the cold case of Shondell McLeod. When Detective Guest interviewed Joyce in prison, she attempted to execute the very plan she had discussed in her recorded phone calls with Katie Long. She admitted to being present when Shondell was killed in 2011, but falsely claimed that Rosalind was the actual mastermind and perpetrator of the crime, spinning an elaborate tale of revenge and hired assistance. She claimed that they had buried Shondell's body in the wilderness of Arabia Mountain Park. What Joyce did not anticipate was the meticulousness of the investigation. The prosecution possessed the recordings in which Joyce had explicitly detailed her intent to frame Rosalind for the crime. When Joyce went to trial in December of 2023 for the kidnapping and murder of Shondell McLeod, the defense argued that because Shondell's body had never been recovered, the state could not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that a crime had actually occurred. However, the prosecution presented a powerful case that relied heavily on the testimony of Katie Long and the playback of the recorded phone calls. Hearing the defendant hatch her plan to frame her deceased wife for the very crime she was currently accused of had a profound impact on the jury. The jury rejected the defense arguments and found Joyce Pelzer guilty of both malice murder and felony murder in connection with the 2011 disappearance of Shondell McLeod. The presiding judge subsequently sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that she would never again pose a threat to any member of the community. This landmark conviction of a homicide case without the recovery of a physical body stands as a testament to the sophistication of modern forensic techniques, the dedication of law enforcement officers who refuse to let cold cases be forgotten, and the bravery of citizens who come forward to assist the police. The resolution of these cases offers several critical insights into the nature of domestic safety and crime prevention. First, it underscores the vital importance of recognizing the early warning signs of coercive control. Behaviors such as extreme possessiveness, attempts to isolate a partner from their family, and the sudden aggressive removal of property are not merely relationship difficulties, but severe indicators of potential future escalation. Communities and support organizations must work together to provide resources and safe exit strategies for individuals seeking to leave abusive situations, recognizing that the period immediately following a separation is often the most dangerous for a victim. Additionally, these events demonstrate how the rapid integration of modern technology can significantly accelerate the apprehension of dangerous fugitives. The coordination between multiple law enforcement agencies, the utilization of real-time mobile phone location tracking, and the analysis of historical digital footprints were all essential in bringing this perpetrator to justice. By sharing these experiences and refining these investigative methodologies, police forces can continue to improve their response times and protect vulnerable individuals more effectively. Ultimately, the successful prosecution of these crimes honors the memory of Shondell McLeod and Rosalind Lewis, ensuring that their warmth, laughter, and positive contributions to their families and communities are remembered as an enduring victory of good over hostility. The complexity of human relationships often defies simple explanation, yet there are times when the veneer of normalcy conceals a disturbing pattern of control, obsession, and ultimate tragedy. When we examine the lives of Rosalind Lewis and Shondell McLeod, we are reminded of the profound vulnerability that can exist within intimate partnerships and the devastating consequences that occur when love is replaced by a desire for absolute possession. These cases, separated by 7 years but linked by a single perpetrator, offer a sobering look into the psychology of domestic abuse and the challenges faced by law enforcement in bringing hidden crimes to light. By exploring the motives, the investigative breakthroughs, and the systemic factors surrounding these events, we can find critical lessons to help protect communities and understand how justice, though sometimes delayed, can ultimately prevail. To understand why these tragic cases occur, it is necessary to analyze the underlying motives of the perpetrator, Joyce Pelzer. In Bayote-Hot relationships, the primary driver was not a sudden loss of temper, but a systematic, long-term desire for absolute control. This psychological profile is characteristic of individuals who engage in coercive control, where a partner is viewed not as an independent person with agency, but as a possession. For Etouche-Hat abusers, the ultimate provocation is the victim asserting their independence. When Shondell McLeod decided to end her relationship and seek a life free from abuse, the perpetrator experienced this as an intolerable loss of control, leading to a calculated decision to eliminate her. Years later, when Rosalind Lewis reached the same conclusion and filed for a divorce, the same pattern reemerged, driven not only by the desire for control, but also by an intense paranoia that her past crimes would finally be exposed. This secondary motive, the silencing of a partner who holds criminating secrets, is a common element in complex criminal cases. When an individual has successfully avoided detection for a serious crime, their sense of security becomes fragile. Anyone who knows the truth, or who is suspected of knowing the truth, represents a direct threat to their freedom. In the mind of the perpetrator, Rosalind Lewis was no longer just a spouse who wanted to leave. She was a liability who could at motive any moment dismantle the fabricated alibi that had kept the police at bay for 7 years. The act of violence in the hotel room in Conyers, Georgia, was therefore both a reaction to the rejection of divorce and a preemptive strike to prevent the truth about Shondell McLeod from ever reaching the authorities. The frequency with which these cases of domestic escalation occur is a matter of great concern for social scientists and law enforcement professionals. Often, these dynamics remain hidden because abusers are highly skilled at maintaining a dual persona. Outside world, the relationship can appear perfectly normal, even happy, characterized by laughter and shared adventures. This public mask makes it incredibly difficult for family members, friends, or even the victims themselves to recognize the full extent of the danger until the behavior escalates to physical violence. Furthermore, the psychological manipulation involved in coercive control often isolates the victim, leaving them with few avenues for support and making the act of leaving the relationship exceptionally dangerous. The narrative of this tragedy begins with Shondell McLeod, a young woman whose life was defined by her devotion to her family and her passion for her work. Born in Guyana, Shondell moved vers Cape Haïti, had her mother and siblings first to New York and eventually to Atlanta, Georgia. She was exceptionally close to her mother, assisting her with daily activities and sharing a deep bond with her 6 brothers and 1 sister. Shondell found her calling in the culinary arts, securing a position as a cook at a healthcare facility in Gwinnett County. Her colleagues and family remembered her as a kind, nurturing person who took immense pride in preparing meals that brought joy to others. It was in this professional environment that she first crossed paths with Joyce Pelzer, a meeting that would set off a chain of events spanning more than a decade. Initially, the connection between Shondell and Joyce appeared to be a positive development, evolving from a workplace friendship into a romantic relationship. Over time, however, the atmosphere of the relationship shifted as the perpetrator began to exhibit highly controlling behaviors. She sought to dictate who Shondell could associate with, demanding the termination of friendships she did not approve of, while simultaneously engaging in unfaithful behavior herself. When Shondell suspected that Joyce was involved with another woman, Rosalind Lewis, she made the courageous decision to end the relationship in the year 2011. This assertion of independence, however, marked the beginning of a relentless campaign of harassment and stalking. The harassment escalated from persistent phone calls to extreme acts of intimidation. On one occasion, the perpetrator entered Shondell's residence during her absence and removed virtually all of her belongings, including the household fixtures, leaving Shondell to sleep on an air mattress in an empty home. This was followed by an even more terrifying incident where Shondell awoke in the middle of the night to find her ex-partner standing over her bed with a weapon, issuing explicit threats to her life. In response to this imminent danger, Shondell sought assistance from the legal system, obtaining a temporary protective order in July of that year. She expressed to her mother a profound fear that her life was in danger, a warning that tragically proved to be accurate when she vanished on September 25, 2011. The initial investigation into Shondell's disappearance was complicated by a series of misleading clues and the limitations of standard police protocols. When Shondell failed to attend a family dinner and did not report for her morning shift at work, her family immediately contacted the police. However, because she was an adult, authorities were required to observe a 24-hour waiting period before officially upgrading the case to a missing persons investigation. This delay, while standard at the time, allowed critical hours to pass. Once the case was assigned to Detective Henry Guest, he began the difficult task of untangling Shondell's final hours, beginning with her volatile relationship history. During the search of Shondell's residence, investigators discovered items that seemed to suggest she had host company shortly before her disappearance, including a man's watch and drinking glasses in the kitchen. This lead led them to a delivery driver named Rico, who had engaged in a light-hearted flirtation with Shondell at her workplace. When questioned, Rico admitted to visiting her home on the night of September 24th, explaining that he had left his watch behind when he departed in a hurry after midnight to return to his family. Investigators carefully verified his account, speaking with his spouse, who confirmed his arrival at home, thereby eliminating him as a suspect and refocusing their attention on the primary person of interest. When Detective Henry Guest questioned Joyce Pelzer, she presented a completely calm, unbothered demeanor, showing no emotional distress over the disappearance of someone she had dated for several years. She claimed that Shondell had simply chosen to leave her life behind and return to Guyana. To support her innocence, she provided an alibi, stating that she had spent the entire weekend at home with her new partner, Rosalind Lewis. When investigators interviewed Rosalind, she corroborated this story, stating that they had stayed home together throughout the weekend and had also taken Monday off to rest. Without a physical location or a body, and with a seemingly consistent alibi from two individuals, the investigation reached a difficult impasse despite the strong suspicions of the detective. Detective Henry Guest, however, refused to allow the case to go cold without a thorough verification of these statements. He obtained search warrants for the mobile phone records of both Joyce and Rosalind. The resulting data completely dismantled their claims. The records showed that their mobile devices were not in the same location over the weekend, and that they had exchanged numerous calls and text messages during the time they claimed to be together. Furthermore, contact with Joyce's employer revealed that her claim of taking Monday off was false, as her supervisor confirmed she had simply failed to report for work. Despite this clear evidence of deception, the lack of a physical location for the victim prevented the district attorney's office from filing formal charges at that time, leaving the family in a state of agonizing uncertainty for 7 years. During this period, Rosalind Lewis was building a life with the perpetrator, unaware of the full extent of the dangers she faced. Born on August 31, 1971, in New Orleans, Louisiana, Rosalind was described by her family as a joyful, outgoing individual who never met a stranger. She had relocated to Atlanta, Georgia, in the early 1990s to seek better career opportunities in medical billing and senior care. When she met Joyce Pelzer, she was drawn to her adventurous and seemingly put-together personality. Despite reservations from some family members who did not attend their beach wedding, in the year 2016, Rosalind was determined to make the marriage work, hoping she had found lasting happiness. The marriage, however, soon began to mirror the destructive patterns of the perpetrator's past relationship. Rosalind discovered that her spouse was engaging in infidelities, including an affair with a woman named Katie Long in Clearwater, Florida. Realizing that the relationship was toxic and controlling, Rosalind decided to seek a divorce in the year 2018. This decision triggered the same dangerous reaction that Shondell had experienced years earlier. On the morning of December 10, 2018, the conflict culminated in a violent assault inside a hotel room in Conyers, Georgia, where the perpetrator had been staying for 3 days. The swift response of the local community and emergency services played a critical role in the immediate aftermath of the assault. A hotel maintenance worker, hearing cries for hot elope from inside the room, knocked on the door. When he received no response, the hotel manager contacted the emergency number 911. While the manager was speaking with the dispatcher, the door opened, and Rosalind, suffering from severe injuries, collapsed onto the walkway. Although she was extremely weak from a significant loss of blood, she remained conscious long enough to speak to the arriving officers, clearly identifying her spouse as the person who had attacked her. Emergency medical services administered immediate life-saving care, but Rosalind tragically went into cardiac arrest in the ambulance and passed away before reaching the medical center. The crime scene investigation at the hotel provided vital physical clues that helped police quickly identify the suspect and her direction of flight. Officers observed footprints left by socks on the wet concrete, matching the description of the suspect fleeing without shoes. Witnesses reported seeing a bloodied individual drive away in a dark vehicle with out-of-state license plates featuring the digits 307. This information was immediately broadcast to regional law enforcement agencies. Back at headquarters, crime analysts conducting a background search on the suspect discovered her connection to the 7-year-old missing persons case of Shondell McLeod, raising the urgency of the manhunt to the highest level. The key to tracking down the perpetrator lay in the sophisticated use of mobile phone technology. Investigators initiated an emergency request with the mobile service provider to obtain real-time location data for the suspect's phone. The tracking data indicated that she was traveling south along Interstate 75, moving rapidly toward Florida. This trajectory suggested she was heading toward the residence of Katie Long, the woman with whom she had been having an affair. Recognizing the potential danger to another individual, Georgia authorities coordinated with state patrol officers along the interstate corridor to intercept the vehicle before it could cross the state line. The suspect's arrest was the result of a coordinated, high-risk intervention by the Georgia State Patrol. In Crisp County, troopers spotted the suspect's vehicle and attempted to perform a traffic stop. The suspect refused to yield, initiating a high-speed pursuit. To prevent a dangerous situation from continuing on public highways, a trooper executed a precision immobilization technique, causing the suspect's vehicle to spin off the road and come to a halt. When officers approached the vehicle, they observed the suspect raising a firearm, prompting them to discharge their service weapons. The suspect was wounded, taken into custody, and transported to a medical facility where she recovered from her injuries before being transferred to jail. A subsequent search of the vehicle yielded decisive physical evidence, including the stained clothing worn during the assault and the weapon used in the hotel room. Confronted with the undeniable evidence of her actions, the perpetrator chose to negotiate, pleading guilty in December of the year 2019 to the murder of Rosalind Lewis. She was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole. However, for Detective Henry Guest and the family of Shondell McLeod, the work was far from complete. The detective traveled to the jail to interview the perpetrator, hoping to finally uncover the truth about the 2011 cold case. During the interview, the perpetrator attempted to construct a final elaborate deception to avoid full accountability. She admitted to being present at the time of Shondell's passing, but claimed that Rosalind Lewis had been the sole instigator of the crime. She fabricated a story alleging that Rosalind was seeking revenge over a medical issue and had hired individuals to transport Shondell to Arabian Mountain Park, where her life was ended. The perpetrator portrayed herself as a passive, terrified observer who had been forced to cooperate with her deceased wife. What the perpetrator did not realize was that the police had already obtained proof of her deception. In August of 2018, Detective Henry Guest had interviewed Katie Long in Florida. Katie revealed that during their affair, Joyce Pelzer had quietly confessed to ending Shondel's life. Deeply disturbed by this admission and subsequent threats Joyce made against Rosalind, Katie had agreed to assist law enforcement by recording their telephone conversations. In one of these recorded calls, Joyce was heard explicitly planning to fabricate the exact story blaming Rosalind for the crime, proving that her statement to the detective was a premeditated lie designed to exploit the fact that Rosalind was no longer alive to defend herself. When the case went to trial in the year 2023 for the murder of Shondel McLeod, the defense argued that the prosecution lacked sufficient evidence because no physical remains had been recovered. However, the presentation of the recorded phone calls completely dismantled this defense. The jury listened to the perpetrator's own voice, calculatingly plotting to frame her deceased spouse, revealing a complete lack of remorse and a highly manipulative nature. The impact of this evidence was profound, leading the jury to return a verdict of guilty on charges of malice murder and felony murder. The judge sentenced the perpetrator to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, ensuring she would remain incarcerated for the rest of her life. This resolution offers profound life lessons for communities on how to recognize and prevent such tragedies. First, it highlights the critical importance of taking warning signs in relationships seriously. Behaviors such as extreme isolation, jealousy, property damage, and threats with weapons are clear indicators of potential lethality. Victims and their families must be supported when they attempt to leave toxic environments, as the period immediately following a separation is often the most dangerous. Encouraging open communication, removing the social stigma surrounding domestic challenges, and ensuring easy access to legal and protective resources can empower individuals to seek help before a situation escalates to violence. Furthermore, this case provides valuable insights into how law enforcement agencies can accelerate the resolution of complex and historic cases. The rapid extraction and analysis of digital evidence, such as mobile phone tower records and communication logs, is essential for verifying alibis early in an investigation. Additionally, maintaining centralized, cross-jurisdictional databases allows agencies to quickly identify connections between active homicides and outstanding missing persons cases. Proactive witness engagement, as demonstrated by the crucial cooperation of Katie Long, shows that building trust with individuals who may hold key information can lead to decisive breakthroughs, even when physical evidence is limited. Ultimately, the successful resolution of these cases is a testament to the dedication of the investigating officers, particularly Detective Henry Guest, who refused to let Shondel's disappearance be forgotten over 12 long years. It honors the efforts of the Conyers Police Department, the Georgia State Patrol, and the legal professionals who collaborated to ensure that justice was served. While the pain of these losses remains deep for the families, the victory of justice provides a measure of peace, ensuring that the warmth, kindness, and joy that Rosalind Lewis and Shondel McLeod brought to the world will be remembered far longer than the actions of the individual who sought to silence them. The complexity of human relationships often hides behind a facade of normalcy, but beneath the surface, patterns of control and obsession can quietly escalate into tragedy. To understand why intimate partner violence occurs with such devastating frequency, one must examine the psychological mechanisms of coercive control. Perpetrators of these offenses frequently operate under a deeply distorted sense of ownership, where the partner is viewed not as an independent individual with agency, but as a possession. When the partner attempts to assert their independence, break free from the relationship, or expose secrets, the perpetrator experiences a profound loss of control. This loss often triggers a highly dangerous escalation, driven by the belief that if they cannot possess the partner, then no one else should. This psychological pathology is not an isolated phenomenon, but a documented pattern that manifests in numerous domestic relations, cutting across different demographics and communities. The tragic events that unfolded in Conyers, Georgia, on the morning of December 10, 2018, offer a sobering look into this destructive dynamic. The peace of a quiet morning was shattered when emergency services received a distress call from a local lodging establishment. A maintenance worker at the hotel had been alerted by guests who reported hearing frantic cries for help coming from one of the rooms. The victim inside was screaming that someone was attempting to end her life. Demonstrating swift professional responsibility, the maintenance worker knocked on the door to intervene, but received no response, prompting the hotel manager to immediately contact 911. As the manager was relaying the details to the emergency dispatcher, the door suddenly opened, and a woman fell onto the external walkway, bleeding profusely from multiple injuries. When local law enforcement officers arrived at the scene, they discovered the victim in an extremely weakened state, barely maintaining consciousness. The responding officers observed that her breathing was shallow and she was experiencing severe blood loss from numerous wounds, particularly to her abdomen and neck. The physical environment of the room bore silent testimony to a violent struggle, with significant evidence of an assault smeared on the door and the curtains. Officers surmised that the victim had desperately tried to open the curtains to signal for help. Despite her critical condition, the victim managed to speak to the first responders. When asked who had committed the act, she identified her wife, Joyce, as the assailant. Emergency medical services arrived shortly thereafter and began administering life-saving measures, including cardiopulmonary resuscitation, when the victim went into cardiac arrest inside the ambulance. She was rushed to the hospital, but despite the best efforts of the medical team, she succumbed to her injuries. The victim was later identified as Rosalind Lewis, a woman whose life was defined by warmth, laughter, and a dedication to helping others. To understand how Rosalind Lewis ended up in that hotel room, one must look back at her journey and the life she had built. Born in New Orleans, Louisiana, on August 31, 1971, Rosalind was raised in a loving, nurturing household alongside her two older brothers and a sister. Her family described her as a bundle of joy who never met a stranger. She carried the vibrant, welcoming culture of her hometown wherever she went, greeting everyone with affection and bringing laughter to those around her. After attending college in New Orleans, she established a career in healthcare administration and medical billing. Her family recalled that she had a special affinity for the elderly, finding genuine fulfillment in bringing comfort and joy to senior citizens. In the early 1990s, seeking new opportunities and a different environment, Rosalind relocated to Atlanta, Georgia. It was there that she eventually met Joyce Pelzer through mutual acquaintances. Initially, Joyce appeared to be an ideal partner. She was perceived by Rosalind's family as educated, polite, well put together, and adventurous, matching Rosalind's own love for spontaneous travel and exploration. After dating for several years, the couple married on a beach in the year 2016. While some members of Rosalind's traditional family had mixed feelings regarding the same-sex marriage, their love for her remained unwavering, and they simply wished for her genuine happiness. To outside observers, the marriage appeared stable, normal, and filled with mutual affection. However, behind closed doors, a familiar pattern of domestic discord and instability was beginning to take root, mirroring a dark history that Joyce had managed to conceal for years. Following the tragic passing of Rosalind, the investigation transformed from an assault inquiry into a homicide case. The police immediately launched a comprehensive search for Joyce Pelzer, recognizing that she posed an ongoing danger to the public. To track her down, investigators relied on a combination of physical evidence, witness accounts, and digital forensics. At the hotel, officers analyzed the registration records, which showed that the room had been booked by Joyce for 3 days prior to the incident. Surveillance footage from the hotel captured the physical struggle behind the window curtains, followed by the maintenance worker knocking on the door. The footage then showed the victim falling onto the walkway as the suspect calmly exited the room and walked toward the rear parking lot. The maintenance worker provided a crucial description of the suspect fleeing the scene. He noted that she was not wearing shoes, only socks.